Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show tonight. It's time to talk about Seahawks football yet again. I am Brendan, and that is Brandon. We are here to talk about a game that happened about 8 years ago. I know we're a little bit, usually we're coming in a little bit hotter than this, but we got to close the book on this one, I think. We got to talk about this one and just kind of get it out of the way here as we move towards the last few games of the season. I got to tell you, this game kind of just kind of a go through the motions sort of game. Definitely kind of just a game that your team played. I don't have anything remarkable to say about this one. I don't think there's a whole lot remarkable to say about it, but we're going to say what needs to be said because it's still Seahawks football, guys. It's still Seahawks football, and we're still here. We're still alive. We're still at 7-7. Still got the opportunity to make this season, make something special of this season. So I am joined, as I am twice a week, by the Hawks Nest, Brandon. How are you doing tonight?
Hanging in there, hanging in there. It's a tough loss when you follow the Niners, of course, and I'm sure your chat's been filled up with plenty of Niner fans letting you know about it. So, licking some wounds, but I've got the Neosporin on them, and some bandages are put across the board. So I think we're healing.
Right, right. Yeah, it's not fun to lose to your division rival. It's not fun to lose to a division rival at home, especially when you know that game was the death knell to your chances of winning the division. Literally the death knell because it is now an over. The race is now over. Niners have clinched. Niners are moving on to bigger and better things. And we're just trying to find something to move on to that isn't just this offseason. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this game because I don't think there's much else to really talk about. We got some roster news today. It's minor stuff, though. It's like Laquan Treadwell is now going to be part of the 53-man going forward because of the Lockett injury. Jordan Brooks looks like he avoided the worst in terms of his injury situation. But let's move back in time a little bit to Thursday night and unpack this game a little bit because it was better than some of the previous games. It was better than the Panthers game. The team played better. The team, more elements of the team I felt showed up. But did they really rise to the occasion of a game like this? Can we really say that they met the moment? What do you think?
I think you're on the right track in the respect of your next statement would be if you're going to win this kind of game. I know you're not saying this, but your next statement would be if you're going to win this kind of game, you need to match that level. It's like when they say, boy, there's playoff energy in this game. When you hear announcers say that sometimes where you can feel it tangibly on the field, whether it's playoffs or not, it can be these kind of matchups where there's just a little bit extra on the line. I don't think that the team played bad per se, Brendan, and I wouldn't want to drape it in that it was just they were horrible across the board. But I think that it was a team loss, maybe with the exception of the special teams unit. And I think as well that you could bring a lot of it down to, well, I think there's a few things with it, but one of the main things would be the thing you're most pointing a spotlight on here, which is that you just didn't match the Niners. They wanted this more than you did. And quite frankly, I feel like I've been able to say that a couple of times this year. We can talk all we want about talent and whether or not you have it. And I think schematics fits into this. But I think another part of this also is the part that's been eye-opening to me this year, where there's been times in games where I just don't see the team playing with a typical Coach Carroll team fire and recklessness and free and easy. And I don't know if I can just blame it on a new scheme because I don't see them implementing a new scheme in such a way. And if you heard Hurt today, he talked about the fact that they've taken out all of those complications to simplify things so guys could run fast. So we can't blame it on the new scheme really at all. So that was the part that kind of jumped out to me. It's a far cry from the intensity level of those Niner games back in the early 2011, 12s, 13s. It felt to me a little bit like there was just, like you said, I felt a little bit of a guys going through motions at certain places. Some guys were in it. Some guys to me just kind of felt like whether they've sort of checked out already looked towards the end of the season or they're just playing injured or I don't know. That's the feeling that came out. I'm not saying I know for sure. It's just that's what we do here is general feeling of what you get coming out of the game. And that was something that stood out to me as it seems to have stood out for you too.
Yeah, I don't feel like the team quit. I don't feel like the team was playing like, they went out there and just half-assed it. I
Yeah.
don't think any of that was necessarily the case. Like, I definitely felt that way coming off that Carolina game. The team was just flat in that game. I didn't see a whole lot of great effort in that game. I just saw a team that was out there collecting a paycheck. That wasn't the case in this game. This game was more like they put enough out there to feel okay about themselves, but they didn't put enough out there to actually give themselves a really good chance to win this game. And to a certain extent, when I look at some of the things that the team did well in this game, relatively speaking, like I think we can both agree that the run defense was better than it had been in many of the previous games, right?
I mean, I would say it was improved, but I don't say it was good. And it's coming off being kind of atrociously bad to getting to just, I guess, okay to semi bad. So I mean, I don't know how much I really give that trek of it. I mean, you had a third string quarterback that you didn't have to worry about pushing the ball up the field. You had no Debo Samuel. All you had to do was concentrate on the run. So coming out of this game with how many yards did we give up on the ground in total? 180, 90, 200?
It was 170, but 55 of those yards were on that last drive, the garbage time drive.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't discount that either. It's like the yards are the yards. You gave up as many yards as you gave up. If you gave up a 50 yarder or a 96 yarder or 76 yarder, you gave them up. And so like, I can't just take away, well, we got him down to 3.5 yards per carry because of Bubba DeBoff. To me, it's a little bit like going back to the Rams game and going, well, Cam Akers came into that with 3.3 yard per average, and then you got 3.5. I'm like, well, was the running game effective? Were you able then to take advantage of the quarterback, get him into third and longs and force him into really tough situations? No, not really. I would say it's an upgrade, Brennan, and I'm not trying to paint this too poorly with it, but I'm not going to overstate this for what it is. This run defense is not good, and it wasn't good in this game. And whether it's mildly improved, I don't see anything in mildly improvement with it that was indicative of them taking steps forward within the defense or that they found some sort of solution to it. They didn't have a lot to worry about on the back end, and they still barely kind of hampered it down, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, that was one of the things I took away from as well. It's kind of sad that we have to sit here and try to find silver linings in a game where you're playing Brock Purdy, who, after watching that whole game, I don't know if he's capable of throwing the ball more than 15 yards.
Bingo. That's my point on it. Like, exactly, Brendan. That's the thing. This doesn't happen in a vacuum cleaner. It's not just simply we stopped Christian McCaffrey at the Niners. It's you're stopping McCaffrey, no Debo Samuel, and they've got a third string, seventh string quarterback who does not have an arm to push the ball up the football field. You saw a lot of those throws go in a lot of different directions when anytime he had to get up the field. And that should be a guy that you're getting him into 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s. And instead they were at least good enough in that run game consistently to get, unlike our Seahawks, to get into 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 5s. Say nothing of giving them the short routes to use that were wide open all day when they wanted to do that stuff too. So it's good to a degree, but it's such a minor jump, Brendan. If it was 35 yards more, you probably be going, well, it was another bad day, So it's like it's okay. I'm gonna have a hard time finding silver linings on this. I am. I've been spending a couple days trying to find the bright side because I hear the Seahawks fans out there saying, no, it's just talent. Give it the 1 year. I hear all the stuff that they're kind of saying out there, and I'm trying to hear it and become a little more positive in my outlook on it. But I'm also a little bit like it. I'm struggling with that one myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, like I said, it does show you how far we have fallen as a fan base, trying to find the silver lining in a game like this, where you should be able to dominate a game like this on defense. You're playing Brock Purdy. Niners don't have Debo. And I understand that they still have Kyle Shanahan. They still have a nice running game and all these things, but you should be licking your chops going into a game against a quarterback like Brock Purdy. You should be excited to play a team that doesn't have their top receiver. Mm-hmm. And it was okay. Like 21 points is not that bad. Your defense gave you a chance to win, but they didn't force any turnovers. This was the kind of game where you absolutely could have teed off in that regard. And you had the one chance, the one golden chance that Quandre Diggs let bounce off his chest, but you didn't force any turnovers. You got practically no pressure on Brock Purdy at all. And if you had gotten some pressure on him in a game like this, it would have changed everything. Like, you get pressure on a quarterback like that, see what happens. And we just couldn't do it. So it's a very lackadaisical approval that I give the defense in a game like this. It's not anything I'm excited about. Like, if you were to go through this game on defense and try to find the players who actually played well, like, what players on defense stood out as playing well in this game, do you think?
Well, I think even the players that probably played well have their horrific moments. But it seems like Barton played a pretty good game, but then that last play was really on him based on what I'm kind of seeing on watching it a couple times. It seemed like a lot of guys didn't do their job right, but he definitely was one of them on that one. Take a Tariq Woolen, who probably played a pretty solid game, but he's got the responsibility on the blown coverage for the interception over the top. So even when you go to find guys, you almost have to put a bit of an asterisk. I don't really have anybody though that I would say that's straight away clear that just played really well in this football game. Miles Adams at times I thought showed a little something there, but I don't know if consistently that's where his day was at. That was a couple of splash plays. And I want to make sure, I mean, it's because we're going to get to the offensive side of the ball in this. I wouldn't say that this was a defensive as they get the majority of the blame, 21 points, all that. But again, third string quarterback, no Debo Samuel. You need this game. You're at home, short week. There's a lot of built-in advantages as there has been for this defense in a lot of the games this year, Brendan. A lot of the games this year, you look at this defense where it's sitting, folks, and you go, okay, you're in the bottom of the league, and you want to talk about it being talent. Let's also not forget that we could go blow by blow through these games this year and the offenses you've played and find just a collection almost every game of those offenses missing players across the board, that you're getting to sort of feast on those teams that are a little weak in their knees at that point, and still yet you aren't able to at any point really get to that point of turning a corner or looking good. You're always on this sort of shaky ground no matter what. And it's the part that has me disconcerted about this defense, again, not just for this year, but it's the looking forward aspect of it where I become a little skeptical, Brendan, that's simply merely it's only a talent only issue. I mean, you mentioned not getting pressure in this game. And let's go back to Clint Hurtt's own comments on this. Well, they just got the ball out of their hands so fast. Well, why is that, Clint? Is it because you don't ever bring any pressure looks? Is it because you get him into third and shorts a lot because you're always in these soft zones? And then when he's converting those first downs from third and threes and third and fives, is it because you have your cornerbacks and off coverage and dropping into bail technique post snap when they only need 4 yards? Could that be some of it? Could that be a little bit of it maybe? But that question's never asked or proposed by the reporters in that thing. And it drives me crazy because why can't you? Yeah, you're not going to get pressure if the quarterback holds the ball for only like 2 seconds. But if you don't press down those routes and squeeze him up and tighten him down a little bit, then he's always going to keep throwing those short routes and you're never going to get pressure. See how that it's a little bit like circular, right? So it's that first part of it drives me nuts that we forget about with this, where your soft zones give the quarterback a ton of confidence to throw it short and complete those passes on the regular, even a third string quarterback. And Brendan, this is not a one-off situation. This is something that we've gotten to see through the years with Coach Carroll's defenses, right? You've talked about it. It's become a meme at this point that a second string quarterback can come off the bench and slice and dice this defense up or feel really comfortable with this defense, unlike a backup quarterback should look. Colt McCoy shouldn't tear a defense up in back-to-back years on completely two different offenses, neither of which offense is very prolific he's playing on coming in as a backup. And that's what we've just gotten to see. Or Nick Mullins with the Niners before this, or whoever. I mean, probably 3 or 4 names we can probably pull out from the Niners post point here in recent history. It's annoying.
Yeah, and this is actually a good opportunity to bring something up. There's a video going around the internet right now. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's basically about the Vic Fangio defense. Have you seen this video? It's called something like "This One Man Has Ruined Defense in the NFL."
No.
Okay. I will try to hit you up with the link a little bit later if you want to check it out. It's very interesting, very educational. Basically, it describes how Vic Fangio has completely ruined defense across the NFL, how all of his proteges across the NFL are doing terribly, and how his defenses are just getting destroyed, with the exception of the very rare instances where the defense has 2 hyper elite safeties that can play all over the field. Like if you don't have that, like a great example, they were talking about what was going on in Seattle, but they also talked about what was going on in Green Bay, which is similar. They're trying to do the same things and their defense is getting destroyed. And the main reason why, just to sum up this video in a few minutes here, is that you need 2 safeties that can do it all in the Vic Fangio defense. That way you can't know which one is going to do what from snap to snap.
Yeah.
So any defense that doesn't have that is playing these super soft coverages that get destroyed and ultimately end up one of the worst defenses in the league. And they said the only exceptions are when you have two super talented safeties. And that's one thing that I will say. Hopefully next year we have Jamal Adams back. Hopefully next year, either we've moved on from Quandre or Quandre has a season where he remembers how to tackle again, whichever. And go ahead.
I want to push back on that actually.
Okay.
Because I've heard this also as a narrative thrown out there that to make the Fangio defense work, you actually have to have only Vic Fangio is the only guy that can run it. And I think that this is, I always like to say one of my deals I speak out there is context matters. And so, was Desai getting the Bears defense, which was undermanned and didn't have two hyper athletic safeties last year as the defensive coordinator running the purified cover two Fangio scheme, doing pretty good with that personnel? Was that defense playing over their head last year? Yeah, there were. So he got it successful there. Staley back with the Chargers was running the Fangio scheme, or with the Rams was running the Fangio scheme when he had the personnel to make it run. They didn't have they had good safeties. They didn't have super hyper athletic safeties. They had other parts of that defense that could make that run. So I would argue that it doesn't quite apply in that neighborhood of things to me, just by that broad brush. When I look at the Vikings and their application of it with Ed Donatel going there, who certainly understands how to run the Fangio scheme, what did they do from a defensive personnel standpoint to fit that new design of defense that they're applying this offseason? What did we do from a personnel standpoint to fit the designs of this personnel scheme grouping? Really, when you go and look at the Chargers, they've been struggling to find the right output of the right defensive personnel. And what did they do? Again, context matters. Has Bosa been there all year? No, it's been Khalil Mack. Have they been injured a lot across the board there? Yeah, they have. Does J.C. Jackson completely underperform the huge, massive contract they gave him to be the lockdown cover corner, to be the Jalen Ramsey guy equivalent of Staley's defense of what he had with the Rams? Yeah, they did. So I don't really buy into this, the only guy that can run it and that he's ruined NFL defenses in it. What it is that you get teams adopting stuff and then they don't change their scheme. They do stuff crazy, Brendan, wild. Like they take a 4-3 personnel grouping across the board with all the depth that you've stacked over for some last 5 or 6 years and just decide to flick that all over into a 3-4 defense and see what happens. Oh my God, it fails. What a shocker. And then you don't really fully apply it, Brendan. Let's also apply this on the thing, because it becomes a personnel problem at first. In our case, then it becomes a schematic issue because you're not really running the Fangio cover 2 shell stuff. You're not bringing the pressure-based packages that was promised by Clint Hurt in his press conference when he was hired as the defensive coordinator. So how can I say it fails? You don't bring in the right personnel. You don't apply all the schematics across the board. I can't speak to Minnesota on this. But I can tell you for sure that I know in Los Angeles Chargers, that thing's not running because he doesn't have his personnel there to make it run. And it doesn't just happen by him being there 2 years. They suddenly have all the magical personnel there to make it go, especially when they have got guys injured or underperforming at those points. And so I think it's more that than I think it is just that he's like broke defenses across the league. I think it can work. You got to commit to it though. And that means committing to it fully, not halfway, not some of this, some of that, hybridization. You go with it or you don't.
I mean, there's probably some truth there as well. There's probably more to it. I'm oversimplifying a pretty long video here.
Well, and it's something I've heard out there though. It's not just from this video, Brendan. It's a very common thing I'm hearing about this Fangio defense. And I just got to push back on it because it's like, it's all about recent history of this year. Stuff's happening. So that's the rule of thumb because this year right now, and that it could be a rule of thumb, but we got to go instance by instance there. And certainly there's some schematic issues if you don't have the hyper athletic safeties. But as I said, I've seen this defense also run without having the uber hyper athletic safeties also on the back end. The Rams didn't have uber hyper athletic safeties. The Bears had Goldman, who was playing okay. Who was their other hyper athletic safety there at that time when Desai was running that defense right? He was able to make a run because there was other parts that could be dominant, is my point. Just like the Rams, you could have other parts that are dominant, like an Aaron Donald or a pass rush or a lockdown corner on the outside. And then it makes less of the need of the safeties to have to cover as much ground or territory on that. It helps to have that stuff. It's good to have that in the scheme. And you're absolutely 100% right, Brendan, in that you need those kind of safeties that can do everything as a safety. It doesn't ask a safety to be a free safety or strong safety. It asks a free safety to do strong safety stuff and a strong safety to do free safety stuff. But I just can't. That's one that one gets my hankles up because I don't see that for in the same way. It certainly is a de jure defense. It's being applied in a lot of places, but it's also not being applied correctly when I look into some of the individual moments of this.
Oh, you believe that if this team comes back next year and dedicates themselves to the Fangio defense, they can produce really good results.
Well, I don't think that for instance, here you mentioned Quandre Diggs. You've got to cross the Quandre Diggs road. Quandre Diggs is a free safety or what he was at the start of his career, a slot corner in this league. I know he's done some strong safety stuff, but he's not committed enough as a tackler anymore to do the strong safety stuff legitimately on a consistent basis. He doesn't want to tackle. That much has been pretty obviously made this year, and maybe understandably so. But he's gotten so many missed tackles here now as it stacks up with the year. Can you count on him going forward as he gets older to be a better tackler suddenly next year? I mean, maybe it happens, but I certainly don't think I'd want to, maybe count on it. I would probably have to look at, finding that other guy. I think it's kind of like what you're saying is right. You need the hyper athletic guys, but it's not the only thing that makes this defense go or don't go. It's that are you committing to it fully? So I think with Adams' case, yes, maybe there with that you could bring out of there, and that's if he's able to be healthy enough. But in Quandre's case, I think he's more of a best suited for a typical 4-3 defense that has him playing a lot of typical free safety stuff with a strong safety down near the box. A little bit of like stuff we used to do a little bit more off. That's probably his best place going forward, rather than being asked to do strong safety things.
Right. So if you were to commit right now, what do you want this defense to do in this offseason? Go back to the 4-3 or double down on the new Fangio stuff? What would you say?
Do I get to dictate on whether we run the Fangio stuff pure, or do I have to still take on old Carroll stuff?
Well, assume that you're going to run it pure, like you're kind of running the Waldron offense pure this year.
I would run it pure. I would attack free safety as a priority one way or another. I would move out all my personnel up front. I think Carroll's defense of the old has seen its day and it's passed on. I think this defense will probably see its day at some point here soon too, as Fangio, but at least it's an updated defense, and it provides more confusion for the opposition, whereas Carroll's other defense provided no confusion for the opposition. And so if you actually commit to it, and then you commit to bringing in the personnel, I'd like to see this defense run rather in that direction of things.
All right. I'm with you on that. I would agree with that personally. I think that is something that would be preferable above all else. But this video that I saw talking about the Fangio defense did kind of have me thinking. Did kind of make me consider maybe this defense is just kind of DOA unless you have very specific players.
Well, and I think definitely you've got to have the players to make a scheme work. That's for sure, Brendan. And when you've got a schematically set right now to a lot of 4-3 players on this team, we look at our starting defense right now in the front seven, and you might take one or two guys, or even the depth of guys, right? Take the starters and the depth. You might have one or two guys that you're like, oh, that's a pure 3-4 guy. So your roster doesn't fit to it right now. You've got to get the guys in to do it. But I think if you did commit to that and you committed to actually staying with the pressure-based packages and you played a little bit less of the soft coverages, that's the part, though, that, Brendan, I'm not so sure that Carroll would ever give up. I don't. That's the thing that I think will be, if I was making a psychic guess right now, the failing of this defense won't come from us adding the right personnel at that point. It'll come from the fact we don't run it in the way it needs to be run to work, and specifically on the coverage end of things.
Well, I mean, we're about to have a bottom 3 defense, so maybe he shouldn't be the one. Maybe he just shouldn't get a say in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you believe that Carroll lost his personnel privileges this last offseason because of all the bad drafts, you got to believe that he could also lose his defensive privileges if the results are this bad, right? Like, it's kind of the same thing.
I would think so. I mean, and I'm not, again, wanting to be in that position of seeming like I'm calling for Coach Carroll's firing. This isn't about firing. It's just saying about confidence. And for me with Carroll at this point, I don't do this built-in confidence thing of, well, Super Bowl happened 9-10 years ago, so he has all the confidence in the world for me. I will trust him with my firstborn, and he can go off down the road, and it'll be like, I don't have that in me anymore. Like, at this point, it's been a couple of years of us analyzing this and looking at this, and I'm going down the same kind of roads as far as problems. And I'm seeing, not only am I going down the same roads as far as problems go, I'm seeing other roads now branching off of those roads, and it's only increasing now. Right. And that's the problem here, is things aren't becoming reduced as far as the number of issues I can point to. Lack of pass rush, soft zone coverages. Oh, now I can't stop the run. Oh, now I'm not really sure about the energy level of your crew week to week. Are they really playing hard for you? Are they really getting into it on you? I've heard the coaching staff over recent years mention the fact that they're trying to teach it up, Brendan, that they're trying to let them know what they need to do, and they're just not getting the messaging. They're not getting the messaging. So you're not getting your messaging across to the players you handpicked. Right. Really. These are new now issues on top of those old issues I mentioned, which, like pass rush, this ain't a new issue just this year, folks. Pass rush has been going on for a while. And if you want to go all the way down, it's a lack of talent, yes, But it's also that thing I just talked about where modern age, Brendan, tell me if I'm wrong on this. Modern age, you got spread concepts. Offenses are trying to attack with dink and dunk stylings. You have a defense that drops to depth of coverage, that drops into soft zones over and over again at a very predictable rate. How is that then not work for those offenses to just continue to dink and dunk that kind of defense? And that's how you get the backups, the third stringers that are able to rip this defense apart. And it's not just been this year. We've seen this over. I mentioned Colt McCoy in 2 different years, 1 year with the Giants, 1 year with the Cardinals did it to us. Nick Mullins, another to go 3 years back or something. You got him doing. We've seen this very, very often. Teddy Bridgewater, right? Dalton threw for 410 yards against us at home a couple years ago, and then came back again this year and beat us against the Saints. The Red Rifle, we've seen it a lot. And so if I see something happen a lot, I got to see something that shows me signs that thing won't happen a lot anymore. And Brendan, am I wrong? Where are those signs that this does fix itself just simply with the talent? Or am I wrong? Am I off?
Well, yeah, I think most people would agree that we need to radically change the scheme as well. I don't think there are very many people on board with this scheme because even the people who like the new stuff recognize that it's not that much new stuff, and the new stuff doesn't mesh very well with the old stuff.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah. And so maybe they do pick things. Maybe they take a little bit less from Carroll and go, okay, just let the defense go fully to decide and hurt and let them run this thing. And you be the coach. I don't think he'd give up his defense though, Brendan. I think he might be willing to give up player personnel control, but I think the defense that's a whole nother ball of wax, kind of at that point. But hard to see if he's not going to, like you said, I think the thing that video probably has done right is if you look at these teams, be it with Vikings, I know for sure the Vikings, they brought in Zadarius Smith this offseason. They've done nothing else with that defense for quite a bit of time. They've hoped Danielle Hunter was going to come back, Zadarius Smith, but they've slowly over the recent years seen their own interior of their line start to waste away. Linebackers getting old. Harrison Smith's starting to get up there, right? He's been around forever. So you didn't really do a whole lot to put new stuff in. And the chart, I already broke down kind of with the Chargers, what they had going on in their situation. So I think there's explanations for a little why this doesn't work in other places. And there still is concerns. Hyper athletic safeties are something you need in this. It's still a very good point on that video's point of that, Brendan, that you do need that in the system. You can't just have a guy who's a free safety pure or a strong safety pure. They've got to be able to do, both skill sets. I might argue that I've got some worries about Adams running cover 2, cover 3 stuff when I got to ask him to do free safety stuff. I might say that's not exactly his bag, but that's another whatever for another time.
Yeah, better than Josh Jones.
Better than Josh Jones. That's true.
David Pugh, thank you for the $9.99. Before I go to bed, get Jordan Brooks off the team. He's a liability in the tackling game half the time and a liability in coverage 100% of the time. And this team needs to draft or sign a receiver. Good night, y'all.
Hey,
all right. All right. So Jordan Brooks. It sounds like he's going to be okay, by the way. That's good. Neck injury, always kind of scary to hear about. Yeah. Next can be a problem. But we got 3 games left in this third season. He's got a 5th-year option coming up this offseason. So we've got to make a bit of a decision here. And then a year from now, we're going to have to make another decision. So what are those decisions, you think? What are they going to be?
Well, I would not engage a 5th-year option that probably is going to be about $10 million, right? Something in that neighborhood.
I think we looked at it. It was something like 13 or 14.
Oh, Jesus. No on the 5th-year option. I think David puts it in a pretty good instance here. The tackling and his ability in the run game, maybe it's the change to the 3-4 defense. Maybe it's because the guys up front can't command double teams. Whatever the reason is at play this year for Jordan, him in the running game has gone downhill at least a little bit. Meanwhile, his coverage has been in the very same place it's always been since he's arrived in the door, since what it was when he was in college, and it's not going to change anytime soon. I think Jordan Brooks has some skills as a player. I think Cody Barton has some skills as a player. I think they both have something in common where there's the deficiencies they have are enough to offset the good that they bring, and that they get exposed enough in those deficiencies that you just can't be kind of concentrating on that. Silver lining is a great way to put it. Maybe you know what you want to title this video. You can't have that little tiny silver lining when there's so much more of this that you see that really becomes vulnerable, that teams really go after with these two guys in their own particular manner. And with Jordan Brooks, the word is out on the street. Word is out that this guy can't. hold up in zone coverage, and you can attack him. If you keep attacking, there's going to be a lot of yards to be had. And that's been consistently there all year this year. So, I don't see any point in the future that gets better, Brendan, suddenly next year. He just doesn't have the spatial awareness in zone to understand when a guy's leaving, when new guy's entering, how to stick with the man as they're going past. It's kind of, you can almost go through a checklist of little skills you'd need in zone coverage. And I think they would all go unboxed with Jordan, and it's just kind of the way it is, unfortunately. And what's weird is he's actually pretty good in man coverage, but of course we don't run man principles, so you don't ever really get to see that with Jordan, but he actually can run some man. He just has the zone thing is not him. It's just not his game.
Yeah, which makes it really confusing why you drafted him when you knew you were going to be playing zone defense and that's all you wanted to do, knowing what kind of player he was, because this stuff is not really a surprise, is it?
Well, and here's the thing where people you say that, Brandon, but who else would say that? And it's like, well, okay, you want me to back this up with somebody that was a professional that said this. Let me go. Bucky Brooks, former scout who served underneath general manager John Schneider in Seattle. Jordan Brooks is picked draft night. Bucky, he's doing his telecast stuff because he's part of the NFL Network, goes, oof, I don't really know about this fit because Jordan Brooks can't really, the coverage thing's a big deal for him, 90 dropbacks in senior year and he not one breakup or anything. And no doubt Bucky had watched some film of him in zone, and Bucky knew Seattle liked to play zone. He's like, I don't know if I like that fit for Seattle. Well, Schneider comes back in his press conference and kind of takes that a little personal. And he's like, yeah. I mean, I know, what I would say to Bucky Brooks is, I know he watched his last year of college film, but I watched his previous year on top of his last year of college film. And that's what John said at the time, which then I went back at that time, Brendan, and went, okay, I'll go watch that film then. I'll go watch every one of those games then in his previous year and see if John's right. And what you saw instead is he was playing outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. And when he was dropping into coverage, it was in man-based principles. And when he was attacked in zone, or when he was asked to run zone that year, he failed. He failed largely. He just wasn't asked to do it as much as he was in his final year in college. So no, it wasn't that he was good in coverage. Bucky was right. It's just that it's not, and this is also why it's not improving into the future. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but there's a lot to it.
We need these. No, we need these right now. This is the stuff we got to talk about.
Yeah. So I align with Bucky on this one. I don't know what John was thinking on this one. You have a coach that doesn't want to run man stuff. It's unfortunate because it's like, if you ran some more man stuff, I think he could do okay. I do, but we don't want to run man ever. We are only a zone-based team, really. I'm sure that somebody could pluck up some film and go, oh, no, here's one case you ran man. But by all and large, you stick in zone, you drop back in soft zone, and that's kind of how you roll it.
Right. Do you think that if we got a good defensive line in front of Jordan Brooks, if we got a nice defensive line, not these stiffs and jags and mediocre players, do you think at the very least against the run he would be worth enough to justify that fifth-year option? Like, at what point do we at least say he's worth, good money?
Well, I think part of the problem for me comes into and I look at this of, when it comes to NFL franchises or the NFL devaluing positions, I think that there is a little bit of an understanding of why teams are doing this across the league, be it safety or middle linebacker. And that you kind of should look at it through the emblem of, well, is it smart to pay? Is there a reason these teams doing this? Is it of a necessity to be playing a linebacker $14 million even on a 1-year contract? I mean, or is it better to be looking younger and get those guys up front that are built and let the guys behind them? And I think it's a good discussion to be had on this, Brendan, but I think it would lean me in the direction away from wanting to be spending a lot of money at middle linebacker, or if I don't have, unless I'm getting, defining play from the safeties, quite frankly, be paying the kind of money we're putting into safeties. That's why I didn't like the Diggs contract. I understand Adams, you had to pay him when you had to pay him, but the Diggs one to me was the one where it's like, you're going a little too high for the combination of that position versus what other NFL teams do across the board. And Brendan, when there's 31 NFL teams not going in a direction, and you're the only team going in that other direction, there better be something smart applied to it. Otherwise, you're looking kind of crazy for doing so. And when you got a league worst defense and you're paying the most into a position when no one else is hardly even paying one safety, much less two at the same time, probably not a great sign that you need to be paying the position, that's the way to go into the future. So I kind of feel that way a little bit with middle linebacker as well. You're right. He would be improved with it. You got Daron Payne and Jalen Carter up front. And by the way, I've gone back. I'm putting a video together right now, Brendan, of it's going to be a Jalen Carter Tez video. You'll love it, man. So he's Tez. He's Cortez Kennedy, brother. So it's eerie. Honestly, they have the same swim move, the same. I went and watched all Carter's. I was just grinding his tape, and he is Cortez. I mean, he is Cortez Kennedy. No
Would take
doubt.
that.
No, it went from, well, like I saw it, like the name of the video will be like Cortez vibes, and with him and Tez right behind him. But like the first step quickness, Tez, the swim move that they can go to all the time, because the first step quickness gets the guy lateral, and then they get the lineman over commit, and then here comes the swim move because they're so fast lateral back the other way. And then they're quick off into that. And they got they can turn the quickness into power off the line as well. So it just increases their power ability because they're so quick into generating it. It just, the linemen slide off of them at times, like they're slippery, and it's odd. Like, why didn't he even get his hands on him? And it's just because he gets so quick and gets the lineman in such an odd place really fast off the line of scrimmage that they just can't get a good press, and he can just work around the angle. So you put those two guys in front of Brooks, yeah, he's going to probably eat up another 40 tackles on the season, and maybe even
plays in the backfield.
I was just going to say maybe even a TFL or something, right? God forbid. So yeah, I think that would be helpful to it, but then the coverage stuff would still be there. And if I'm paying $14 million a year, I can't have a guy giving up 1,000 yards a year receiving from the linebacker position in coverage.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment as well. As for the second part of this, and the team needs to draft or sign a wide receiver, it's probably about that time. But yeah, what are you investing into it, you think?
Well, I think you're probably looking at, I like his idea of sign, I think, more than draft. Because I think you have a couple of young guys here that you might be interested in as prospects of what they could develop into, be it Drake Young, Bo Melton. I'm definitely thinking at this point, Eskridge just kind of is what it is on that one. So I would be open to maybe trying to see about maybe signing one of those, like, competent veteran guys out there that you can kind of count on, that's steady Eddie, and maybe they're not going to light the world on fire, but you got to bring him in as a number 2 for a little while, or pair off Lockett or pair off Metcalf if one of those guys do go down. I think I'd like to do something like that, small little deal to kind of get in something that, maybe even bring back Marquise Goodwin in addition to it. But I think I'd rather go veteran than young there at this point with that, just because I think to get anything that was really be substantial, Brendan, you're probably looking at going 3rd round. And the way this draft's lining up with how we're going to go with this, we're going to have to be hitting this probably so defensive heavy. And then once we're off the defensive heavy, we're probably going to have to be looking center. Right. So we just end up with some priorities down the board that just kind of push that down to me as far as draft goes.
Yeah. I mean, I've already, of course, I've been looking at draft stuff ever since the season started, because that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there's a scenario where you get to this Seattle's native pick, which is going to be in the teens or the early 20s or whatever. And you're going to have the opportunity to, if you want BPA, take a wide receiver. Would you be completely against that?
Well, I think the receivers I'm seeing up in that territory right now don't get me really excited for where I'd be selecting them. So you got the Quentin Johnson kid out of TCU, who's going to be the first receiver probably off the board. Right. And he's nice. He's nice, but I get some Kelvin Benjamin vibes from him a little bit, but he's like a Kelvin Benjamin, but with yak. And you have Jackson, I call him hyphen, Ohio State receiver that's coming out. Have you watched any tape on him?
Not yet. No, not the Ohio State guy. I like Marvin Harrison Jr. more.
I know that's my theory. That's the thing, is I watch that team and I'm like, yeah, this guy's okay, but Marvin Harrison Jr. though, you know what I mean? So there's some receivers I'll have a hard time kind of warming up on. I'm having a hard time warming up on him, and I think it'd be probably one of those two guys if you're talking about teens. I don't think that this wide receiver class quite looks.
What about Jordan Addison?
Haven't looked at him yet.
Okay, he's the other big guy.
I'll be taking definitely a look at him. So I'll be open to it, Brendan. I just want a guy that's going to give me then I don't know. If I thought I was getting even the guys last year where they went, Brendan, I didn't love, like Drake London in the top 10. Olavi's playing pretty good this year. Wilson's playing pretty good this year.
I like Garrett Wilson a lot. He's working with these garbage quarterbacks and still producing.
Yeah, he's doing good. You got to give him props. So, Ohio State receivers do have a pretty decent track record as of recent. Not even recent, going back to like Chris Carter, those guys do. So I'd probably get him signed up on Jackson if you really wanted to go that route with it. But boy, I think there's probably going to be a better player for a more necessary position when we're sitting there in that teen spot.
Okay, let's see here. Dio Brando, thank you for the $2. Is Jamal Adams worth keeping? Never healthy. I actually made a video about this a few weeks ago, looking at the monetary commitments to Jamal Adams. And
break it down for me.
Basically, for this year, it costs more to keep him than it does to get rid of him than it does to keep him. Let me pull up the precise numbers here. To get rid of Jamal Adams this upcoming offseason, you're looking at a dead cap hit of about $21 million. Unless you do it post June 1st, then it's $7 million and $14 million the next year.
Yeah, so that probably means, Dio, that he's going to remain here for at least one more season, just because the numbers just don't align to kick him at that point. You know, they're not going to want to push it down the line with it. So you don't, especially there, it's almost like a little bit of a lotto ticket. You know, it's he's not quite got those odds of getting back to health, but it's probably some long odds to getting back to being, what we'd hope we were getting with the Jets at this point. Nonetheless, are those odds worthwhile enough than just eating 20 some odd million in dead money just because you've decided, he's done? I don't think you can pull that. So he'll be back one more year. I think you're 100% right on that one.
Yeah, I don't think there's any point in letting him go. The only thing I could think, like, if you do that, you're almost throwing away next season too, right? Because you're saying we're going to pay a dude $21 million to not even play for us. At that point, you're excuse me. It's not like you're completely throwing the season away, but you're kind of saying, okay, we have lower expectations this year. Most teams that have that much dead money don't compete. And the ones that do are the teams that overextend themselves like crazy, like the Rams did.
Right. No, I agree 100%. And you're going to probably have to draft or look at another safety anyways, because I don't think we're going to be able to afford to keep Brian Neal at this point. So, you're going to still have to figure out something for an insurance plan for him. It's not going to be like this year. We go into it and go, hopefully Neal will be good to go. They'll probably get a young guy there to kind of back him up and get going along now. But, yeah, it's going to be at least one more of the Jamal experience, one more year.
I'm not against. I think that this defense would be much better with his presence, and I'm still hopeful he can make a comeback.
Certainly would help us in the running game, wouldn't he? Minimum.
Oh, yeah. Taker610, thank you for the $2. Saw a rumor today. Schneider wants Pete gone. I haven't heard anything about this. Have you?
I have, yes.
Really? Okay, you're going to have to fill me in.
I believe it's from a fairly reporter that's not just a clickbaity kind of reporter, like one of those Breer types or something like that, not Schefter or whatever. But yes, there's a rumor out there that and he's, the way he termed the tweet as well was something like see if I can bring it up on my phone. The way he termed the tweet was something odd, like, yeah, it's kind of been known for a while that he's kind of been done with him and wishes he would just move on. So it was very
really,
yeah, it was. And I'm sorry, I should have had it prepped up for you on it. I would have sworn that you probably were going to get a chance to see it, but
yeah, I have not seen this yet. I guess I wouldn't blame him, right? Like, it must be very frustrating to have a scouting department spend months looking into these players and then just have some old guy go into the draft room on draft day and start moving stuff around because of his gut. Like, that must drive you crazy. But I don't know. I'm a little surprised about the rumor, I guess.
Oh, it's Benjamin Albright. I'm going to send it your way right now on Discord. So I'm going to send it to you on Discord here. That's the part that you clicked onto, the very thing that I clicked onto my brain with this, Brendan, because you and I had a lot of discussions last year about, disseminating between Coach Carroll and Schneider, and with Coach Carroll having that power and control that he had. And shout out to my Anderson, my sub, for sending this to me originally. That you would know there's been times through these years where Carroll's been able to override Schneider at any point in time. You and I believe that those powers have been somewhat stripped back, and now Schneider has that control. That's why we had the great draft that we had. Nonetheless, there was many years there where we do believe, and if I'm speaking for you, tell me if I'm wrong on this, that we believe that there's players that he was overridden on, that there were drafts where that didn't make sense. This didn't make sense. Why would you do this here? It spoke to a coach coming in and overriding a personnel department, a scouting department, a general managership. And if he's been watching that through the years, Brendan, on one side of it, where he's mucking up kind of Schneider's job, and then Schneider watches him on the field where his golden defense quickly becomes, tungsten. how could that not build a little bit within him of some, and it's conjecture here, but it was Benjamin Albright, folks, if you're looking for the tweet, that said on his Twitter. And so it does lead me to believe and wonder if there is maybe a little bit to this that does add up, because it would make sense. There's not a lot of general managers in this league who've had to probably take as much heat as Schneider's had to take through the years for bad drafts, bad signings, when he's not the final guy who gets the final say.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's believable if we're going to have the conversation. I'm surprised about this rumor, though. I had not seen this.
I wasn't on the lookout for it. I had a subscriber post it to me off of this deal, and it blew me. It didn't blow me away. When I started to think about it, it made sense. But the fact that it kind of leaks out to me, I found also sort of interesting, because maybe Benjamin Albright's just a big clickbaiter on it. I thought I've seen him do some fairly legitimate stuff in the past where it's not exactly his forte to do that kind of thing. But it makes sense. It adds up. It would not surprise me in the least.
All right. Well, something to monitor, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this team had to make a decision last off season. Either Pete goes or Russ goes. They made that decision. Maybe they'll have to make another one sooner rather than later.
Well, and if the powers were taken back at that time, the vice presidential duties were pulled back a little bit on Carroll at that point, then there was a discussion about why this has gone wrong up until this point. And that does mean that if that did happen, there was a determination at that point that there was, and again, this is all conjecture, but there's a lot seems to be to this, that there was a point there that came to when, okay, coach, you've been coming in and saying LJ Collier, you've been coming in and saying, get the Jamal Adams trade done by any means necessary. The cost doesn't matter. You've been saying go trade for Jimmy Graham, but then you don't move Jimmy Graham and put him in your offense the right way. You turn him into an inline tight end rather than an H-back or a slot receiver.
Right.
And maybe that's what Schneider was able to say to Jody Allen at that time to wrestle some control back over into his edge of things. And part of why I've got a lot of hope in this future of this next draft, Brendan, is because I do believe this a little bit. And it does explain to me of why you saw a draft go. So that wasn't a draft, Brendan, that went like 45 degrees different, right? Of recent years. You've been covering these.
Right.
That was 180 degrees different draft than the application and approach of how they've been going about it over the last few years prior.
Absolutely. So we'll see, I guess. This is maybe going to be an interesting offseason more than we thought. Who knows?
It very well could be. And again, I'm not calling for Carroll's head. I understand those folks out there that say with what he's done this year, being on the right side of history with the Wilson deal, development of Tariq Woolen, the draft that they've had, he's earned the right to have that next year and to go out there and go with it. Yes, I say let him have his year if that's got to be what I've got to do to sustain the fan base to finally get to a place of determination on. But at the same point in time, that doesn't mean that I have to have full confidence in the fact that he's got everything in the right direction here. And there's still some questions. There's still many different questions in my mind as we roll forward, as it stands with Carroll. If we can get to that nuanced state of things with this, which I know is always hard to do in this area of things.
Yeah, I would push back against one part of that. I do not like giving Pete credit for the Wilson trade when Pete has said himself that he didn't want to do it. He was the one voice in the room that still wanted to keep him. And I think he even said we were prepared to keep him for the rest of his career and make him the highest paid player in the NFL and da-da-da-da-da. And it was John and Russ that dictated him moving on. So I don't know. I don't feel good giving him credit about that. I think that's probably backwards, but regardless,
would you also
generally speaking, you're right.
Would you also say that you're landing at that same place then, though, that you're not really at the point calling for a fire here, but you are saying from a confidence standpoint, it's a little shaken?
Yeah. Like I said, once you're on the path, then you got to stick with the path. If some point this offseason, I get the announcement on my phone that, hey, Seahawks and Pete Carroll have mutually agreed to part ways, I'm not going to be like angry about it. But I would also say, like, when you start the rebuild, you got to give the rebuild a little bit of time, especially when the rebuild gets off to a decent start.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. That's agreed. And that's why I do come down to it. But I think he's got things he does have to prove within these small victories that have had here.
David Pugh, thank you for the $9.99 yet again.
Go, David.
Big loss for this Seahawks D getting Brooks back for Sunday. Someone flick his neck or something. Muse on the field is music to my ears. In all seriousness, I'm super optimistic about this team's future. Now, actually, this is a really good observation here because Tanner Muse got to play significant snaps at the end of that Niners game. And I got to tell you, I did not mind what I saw. What did you think?
I thought he played solid football. He looked good to my eyes. He was on it in both parts of the game. So it was interesting to see him play in that spot and doing so well. Former safety convert out there, but he's running around looking quick, snappy. He was all over stuff, so I liked what I saw from him as well. And I think that David probably is also referencing the fact that you have a safety convert here and Muse playing now middle linebacker, so that those same worries you have maybe in coverage that you get with Brooks, you don't have with Muse, because maybe he's going to be able to hold up a little bit better in some of those instances.
Yeah, I don't know if it's sustainable. I still look at Tanner Muse and I go, he's probably too small to play in this defense, a 3-4 defense as an inside linebacker, but I saw him flying around a little bit. I saw him make some nice hits, especially on that last drive. I don't know. I ever since we picked up Tanner Muse last year, I was immediately intrigued because that's a former, I think, top 100 pick that got pushed out of Vegas, not really because of anything he did, but because the regime changed and they just wanted to turn the page.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you get the opportunity to get a player like that, I feel like you want to jump on it.
Yeah.
So I'm always watching out for stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that the size issues are legitimate. I think, though, the other part of the thing with that, though, is that Brooks doesn't exactly play like a big linebacker. He's a guy constantly swallowed up and looking to take these fortuitous routes to get around the blockers to get to the ball carrier that see him avoiding contact in order to do so. And so if you already have a middle linebacker that's already kind of playing around contact as it is and can't shed blocks, having a guy that's an inch and a half shorter and 20 less pounds, 15 less pounds, is it going to be big difference from what you're seeing on that?
Right. So it sounds like Brooks won't miss this upcoming game, but if he does, I don't mind the extended look at Tanner Muse. I'll just say that.
Me too. Yeah, I'm down for it. I think we got club control of him beyond this season. So
I'm not sure if we do or not, but we could use a happy accident right now.
we could use a nice turn of events here at this point. And David, you should feel optimistic about this team's future. Yes, we've got some questions with the coaching, but the hardest thing to do in the NFL beyond finding the coach is to get the talent all stacked up at just the right time. And the way you're going to be able to set the stage to put this talent together and put this team together. You got young players that are already performing very well on rookie deals. This is the stuff that can really help to set that stage, grease that stage for you to become a really elite team in the future. And none of our worries or concerns here take away from that.
Right. This is still the happy path, guys.
Yeah.
This is still the happy path. The unhappy path is not present anymore. The unhappy path involves you re-signing Wilson last offseason and being stuck $250 million to a quarterback who looks like he's not even top 20. So we've avoided the unhappy path already. These are all just different happy paths.
Exactly.
Taker610, thank you for the $2. If we fall outside top 3, trade for Anderson/Carter. I would say no. What do you think?
No, I would want to trade up in this draft. There's no situation that would see me being willing to do that. I just wouldn't want to go that direction. So I would try to find something else good in there. And I'm sure there'll be a fantastic player outside of those two guys that are in there. They're definitely the number 1 and 2 best defenders so far that I've looked at in the draft here, but there's a lot of really good players in this draft, and you can make this defense improve, not just by those two paths and approach. You got to give up too much Taker to move up into the draft. The cost is too high. This is why my number 1 ideal is to land at 2 or 3 and then be able to move back in even 5, 6, 7 spots, because you pick up so much, and you kind of get to rip people off a little bit, quite frankly. So I like that method approach better.
Yeah, and we just don't know what these teams that are going to be ahead of us are necessarily going to do. I think that there are a lot of people in the Seahawks fan base that have convinced themselves that the Bears are going to take Jalen Carter at 2 over Will Anderson. I'm not sure why we're assuming we know what that scouting department is going to think. I think that people believe that Carter has jumped Anderson in the draft now.
Why do they think the Bears are going to do that?
I don't know. I think it's just because they think that Carter's better than Anderson, so therefore they think that everyone else is going to think that, which is okay. What I would say is this. What I would say is that I think there is a school of thought that Will Anderson did not look as dominant this year because he was taking it easy. Mm-hmm. And that once he gets to the NFL, he's not going to be taking it easy. And I think there are going to be a lot of scouting departments out there that go, he's still the best player in the draft. He just took it easy this last year because he knew he already had that top 3 spot locked up. So same with a guy like, production rarely directly correlates to draft status. Look at a guy like Will Levis. You have said before, you think he still might go top 5, even though he didn't have a very good year.
Yeah.
Why? Because people look at what he can do, not what he did do.
Exactly.
So I'm not completely convinced that the Anderson Carter thing has flipped. I know it's flipped for a lot of Seahawks fans because of our personal needs.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's flipped for a team like the Bears that just kind of need everything.
Who just traded away Roquan Smith, their number 1 edge guy. They don't have an edge guy as a replacement right now.
You mean Roberts Quinn, right?
No, the outside guy went to the Eagles.
Yeah, that's Quinn, right?
You're thinking of Roquan. No, yeah, Dead Quinn. Sorry, Quinn. I get their names mixed up. So yes, Roquan. Yes, that's Quinn.
Yeah, Roquan was the guy who cried when they traded Quinn, and then they traded Roquan.
That's exactly right. So no, they traded their best pass rusher. Look through the recent drafts too in your memory, Brendan. I mean, can you think of a time where you've got it down to there's going to be an edge and there's going to be a defensive tackle, and that they get to that clear consensus point and the defensive tackle goes over the edge? It wasn't, you don't get Chase, you don't get Chase, a defense tackle, then Chase Young, or a defensive tackle, then, Nick Bosa, or it's usually always going to go with the edge, or Myles Garrett. It's always the edge guy is going to go first. They're going to be more highly valued, especially if there's a need to the team. That's why I mentioned Quinn, because there's a huge need on the Bears right now for edge rush. Say nothing of the fact that they could go look at a left tackle. They have desperately need offensive line help. I mean, they could fall in love with one of the receivers in this draft and think that we got the guy to help them out there. There's so many different directions that they could lean into it. Say nothing of the fact that they aren't necessarily even 100% convinced of necessarily Fields. That's not the regime that drafted Fields. So they could just as easily go to a quarterback too and move on from Fields and try to get some draft capital back from him if they wanted to do that route.
Yeah, and my best friend is a Bears fan, so let me just remind people here real quick. Let me get up real close to the microphone. They're a dumb franchise. Exactly. Very dumb. One of the dumbest franchises in the NFL. You don't know what they're going to do. They might 100%. Take Anthony Richardson there.
Oh, 100%. I can go through a lot of different picks in the first round where they've been even highlighted. There was Kevin White guy they took a few years ago. The receiver was just awful. I mean, they've had their share of picks through, and say nothing in the quarterback position, them being completely a wasteland in their quarterback decision making and who they choose and who they put their. It's been 3 decades almost of them trying to just find since what was it, that one guy who used to wear the headbands back in the 80s for them, the McMahon.
McMahon, yeah.
Yeah, they haven't had a quarterback, I think, since McMahon there. So, they're an organization that can't quite get right on stuff. And so I wouldn't trust them to just, go Carter there. I think not. I think Carter would fall past 3. I think you're going to see 2 quarterbacks taken and Anderson in the first 3 picks. And that will push Carter to 4 at that point.
And I'm hoping the first quarterback is Bryce Young. I'm hoping Houston really does like him more than Stroud. Are they the only team in the league that likes Young more than Stroud, you think? Or do you think there might be others?
I think that there could be somebody that falls in, because what I hear in my chat is it's the arm talent. People are like, I don't know why. Do you see his arm talent? Does it wow you over?
Not better than Stroud's, that's for sure.
I don't, it just doesn't jump out to me like it jumps out to some, but I got to acknowledge that there's some people with Bryce Young that his arm talent really, really pops for them. Like they're like, whoa, no, these are next level throws he's making across the board. So it just takes the one team to fall in love with it in that fashion to go up and get him. I got to feel like the Texans maybe aren't this out of it on it. And then if they are just so clear cut early on him, unless it's a complete smoke screen to try to like drive up, but then again, Brendan, why would you want that smoke screen out? Because you'd only throw that smoke screen out if you thought people were going to fall in love with him and want to go then trade up for him, right? You wouldn't be throwing the smoke screen and people are like, oh, I get a Wade extra pick for Stroud, or I get a Wade, extra pick for Anderson, So even as a smoke screen, it doesn't really make a whole hell of a lot of sense. And so maybe they're just that in on him, I guess. I'm trying to see it with him, and I got to get into my really deep dive on Bryce Young, but the arm thing I don't get. That's the part that as much of any of his stuff that people talk about where I go, it's okay. It's good. I mean, it's not like amazing power. It's pretty good anticipation. It's pretty good accuracy. But like you said, to me, I see better on both of those 2 areas when I watch Stroud's game. Better accuracy, better anticipation.
Right. Upo, thank you for the $10, and I believe he meant to super chat his following comment, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull this up here. Love the show, guys.
Thank you.
If you give Geno a $25 million raise this offseason, what premier free agent are you giving up bringing in to replace Barton, Diggs, Woods, or the best guard and center available? All right. You want to take this one first?
Sure. Upo, I don't believe that I think you're on the right track by saying it's $25 million raise being, I think it would be around $25 million a year is what he's going to cost, I would believe. I think that we'll find a very good middle road here as far as his cost go. Me and Brendan have actually broken these numbers down, so they're kind of readily at hand for me. If you're talking a 3-year, $85 million deal, you're talking probably $50 million of guaranteed money that you could put into that deal, which allows you to then structure that deal in a way to be able to free up the first year cap hit in a significant fashion in order to still have money to go out there and get a guy like Ron Payne, for instance. So I don't think you're going to be able to go out there and necessarily buy 4 or 5 or 6 other free agents, but I do think you're still going to be able to go out there and get a key free agent or 2 or 3 on there. Say nothing of Upo if you wanted to add a 4th voidable year onto a 3-year contract, and then you could move the money around however you saw fit. You could lower the cap wherever you basically wanted to, absent, I think like the lowest you could probably get with the money would be like, 11 million maybe on the first year or something on the first year hit, 10, 11 million if you were wanting to really get it low. So I would probably go defensive tackle. I'd still want to get, but I don't think that precludes you from giving him that contract. I know it does lower down the amount of free money, but they got 50 million as it is. Yes, if I've got Geno on the first year of that hit, taking up 16 million, that's going to knock some of that down. And then there's a big portion of that knockdown because you have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. But then there's still a pretty good chunk of change, isn't there, Brendan? I mean, that's not all eaten up right there at that point.
Yeah, and remember, we have a lot of draft picks coming up. You can fill many, if not all of those holes in the draft for cheap. Like just off the top of my head, I think Trenton Simpson would immediately be a big upgrade over Cody Barton, and he would probably cost a little bit less. There are like Jalen Carter he wouldn't be cheaper than Al Woods, but I think he would be a big upgrade over Al Woods. And these are not guys you're going to have to spend the big bucks on. So you can tap the draft for a lot of these needs.
And Upo, the guys you mentioned there, the positions you mentioned, middle linebacker, safety, guard, center. 4 of those 5 positions you mentioned are 4 positions that don't tend to go in the first round, that you can tend to get value deeper into the draft beyond that point. So like to Brendan's point, easier to then go out there and fill. It's not as much a position that would be, we got to get our edge rusher who can come in and give us impact instantaneously. We got to make that trade for a Darrell Taylor type. You don't have to do that because you can just let this draft fall to you. And there will be that guy because those guys do tend to slide. You can go at the top of the second round, probably take the center right there, and you're going to be walking out of this draft with the best center in this entire draft, if you want to take that approach with it. So they've got a little bit of, again, to Brent's point, a little bit of their pick and litter with this, but it's also combined with the fact that positions of need happen to be positions that are semi easy to kind of fill versus some of the other positions, like let's say tackle or quarterback or wide receiver, right? Or corner.
Yeah. It should be a little bit easier to take care of. I agree. Let's see here. Red Ace, thank you for the $1.99. JL Skinner, second coming of Cam Chancellor. This is a name I've heard a lot of lately. A lot of people love him.
He does. The tape's good on him for me, Red Ace. I've got him as my number 2 strong safety right now. I just got done watching Christian Smith, so go watch the Georgia safety if you can, Red Ace. I think you might see, if you take those 2 safeties and watch what both of those 2 guys are doing, countermatch them up, I think you'll fall a little bit more in love with Christian Smith because he is, when Brendan talks about the hyper athletic safety that can do it all, that's Christian Smith. I mean, they had that guy playing everywhere, all over the football field. He flies around to the ball. He can do free safety, strong safety stuff. He can do single high stuff. He can come down the box and get on a slot. He was in on Hyatt out of the slot in the Tennessee game that I just watched with Smith. Pretty impressive when you have a strong safety, Brendan, coming down into the slot one-on-one with a guy in Hyatt for Tennessee, who a lot of people see as maybe a de facto first-round pick in this upcoming draft. So, he can do everything. When I watch JL Skinner, the Cam Chancellor comparison, I like it. Bigger, strong safety. He can hit like a load of bricks. He does a really good job, like Cam does, of being able to hit cleanly and take his head out of it. Unlike a Marquise Blair that was a headhunter type, he's not that way. He can get his head out and he can still really crush you. So he's a really good player in the running game. But the problems and the issues I have with Skinner are a little bit the coverage-based stuff. And if I'm talking about taking a guy where he's being put up at right now in that second round, and I see some coverage liabilities in him. I see him struggling when he's got to go backwards as opposed to go forward. If he goes forward, it's great, right? It all looks beautiful. When he's got to start stepping backwards, and if I got to drop him cover 2, or like I talked about with Christian Smith, drop him into cover 3, well, that's not really what he's able to do. So I would worry a little bit about bringing in JL Skinner to our defense, and that can he do all the multidimensional stuff that you need our safeties to do? Can he do free safety stuff? Or is he a pure box safety? And I might offer that he's more a bit of a pure box safety. Doesn't mean I don't like him, but just means that within the context of what we need for this defense, you need the guys that can do both skill sets now. That's why, as Brendan was talking about earlier with this Red Ace, that's what it's rightfully so for that video to hammer on this, Brendan, because you could say in a lot of ways, this is where the beginning of the defense lies in a lot of respects. Because if you have safeties that can't do one or the other, you'll be exposed fast for it, right? If you have just one pure of something or one pure of this, a pure free safety or pure strong, they will be able to own you at that point, because you're going to be left with now your strong safety acting like a free safety in cover 3, Brendan. And it's like, oh, hell, I got to be a center field guy and I run a 4.65 40. How the hell am I going to pull this off? Right. So yeah. It's you got to have both guys that can do both here, Red Ace. We got to look at through a little bit of that lens of it. I love the kid. I do, but I do have that worrying concern with him a little bit in the coverage aspects of things.
Hey, soon. Thank you for the $1.99. Can you guys make a 7-round Seahawk mock draft? I will be making a lot of them personally.
Yes, you can bet me and Brendan are going to squeeze out every last bit of this juice from this draft period. Not because we want to just produce videos, but because we love each and every angle we can take a look at in this draft. So I imagine both me and Brendan will be doing ones where we'll probably be doing mock drafts live. We'll probably be doing a couple of them. We're going to be doing, so you'll be getting mock draft overload. We got to do the .0s on them too, Brendan. Every time we do, I want you to, every time you do your videos now, when you do mocks, once you start doing them, I want the 4.0. I want the Brendan Nelson 5.0 on that. I want to see how many .0s you can get.
I'm probably going to go ahead and do my first one this week. It's about time.
Yeah. Agreed.
So yeah. All right. Okay. So let's talk about this offense a little bit in this game, because kind of like what we said about the defense, where the defense was just kind of, it wasn't terrible, but it was just like, The offense was kind of the same thing for me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't the worst, but it was, just kind of showed up, went through the motions. Obviously the game really turned on that fumble, the one turnover we had this game, the Travis Homer fumble, which was unfortunate. It looked like we actually had a little something going there. Maybe it looked like things were maybe starting to turn in our favor, had a chance to maybe make something of that game there. And you really look at that sequence that took just a couple of minutes there. You had the Quandre Diggs dropping the pick and Travis Homer fumbling a few plays later. That kind of felt like the turning point of that game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So obviously you have that going on, but we want a big picture this. We don't want to just talk about one play.
Mm-hmm.
Big picture wise, what do you think about Geno in this game?
Well, I thought he struggled a little bit. Did he play an out-and-out bad game? I don't know if I would go that length of it. There was some, again, some poor throws that's early on. I think the second play of the game, I don't know what early in the game, he definitely seems prevalent. We saw it, I think, a couple weeks ago in like Oakland, where his first throw of the game, it's interception. Second throw of the game, he's rolling out a big, it's like a commandment of the quarterback position of a no is when you're rolling to your left, you don't throw back across your body to the middle of the field. And he did that, and he almost got it intercepted, which is, it's not just randomized that's you going against the rule of thumb here for quarterbacks. I felt a little bit like maybe there's some stuff with that shoulder here that you mentioned a couple weeks ago, that there's a little bit of, maybe he's not got as much accuracy, or maybe not as locked in. I think he's also pressing a little bit and trying to do a little bit too much, which is going to be natural to happen when you don't have a running game. And this is a little bit of to me, a building up issue, right? It's like you start out with the sniffles, you just got over a cold, you start out with the sniffles and then you end up with bronchitis 4 weeks later kind of thing. And it's like, we were sniffling in Tampa Bay, and then we're starting to cough and our nose is running. And now by the time we get this game, there's just really not anything of a running game to be spoken of at all. And again, it's just all in the quarterback. San Francisco's aware it's all in the quarterback to get this done. You're going up against a Niner team that has a pass rush, which is one of the toughest in football to go up against. You don't want to become one-dimensional against this football team. And if you do so, they're going to probably hold you down and keep you from scoring points. And that's kind of just what happened here. I mean, we got to one point this year, I think we're in the second or third quarter, and they showed a graph on the TV that we had 16 possessions. This first 16 possessions we had against the 49ers this year from an offensive standpoint, from the first game to the second game, we'd scored 3 points, not one touchdown.
Yep.
So you're just, it's the same, a lot of the same stuff from the first game. Can't run. Then you turn one dimensional. They crush you in the passing game enough to where you might get a few throws in, but they're going to get some picks. They're going to get some bad plays. And the homer fumble was brutal.
Right. Yeah, and again, as much as we're not happy with the way the team played, as much as we're, pointing out the things that went wrong, I think you can make an argument that we may win this game if not for that sequence where you had the Quandre drop and the homer fumble, because this game ended up being a one-score game.
Yep.
But I kind of agree with Geno. It's just really hard for me to kill him right now. He's got no running game backing him up, or a very little one. I think Ken Walker did the best that he could in this game, but there's just not a whole lot going on there for him. I know PFF, who was actually very anti Ken Walker earlier in the year, actually gave him a really good grade for this game. I think it was in the 70s. So that was good to see. Also, it seems like in some of these games where he doesn't do much as a running back, he's become a receiving threat. It happened against Tampa Bay as well, which is good to see. Great news.
Yeah, manufacture some touches for him. If you can't get him traditionally, get him in other ways like that.
Yeah. The receivers, I thought, showed up. I thought Lockett and Metcalf both played fine. Obviously, Lockett gets hurt there at the end, which unfortunate. But it sounds like we actually may have dodged a little bit of a bullet there, and he might even be back for week 17 against the Jets.
That'd be cool.
Which, that's good. Fant had a pretty nice game, I thought. He did his thing. 5 catches and a touchdown. So trying to find where on this offense we went wrong, I think if you're trying to put any blame on anybody, you got to take a look at that offensive line. Cross got beat up. I know PFF killed him. They gave him a terrible grade for that game. I can't remember what it was, but it was not good.
Yeah.
Lucas did okay, and then the interior offensive line, I think, got beat up pretty bad. So what we all kind of know what's going on with Gabe Jackson. We're all ready to move on from him. Austin Blythe, I think we're all kind of on the same page there too. He's just not good enough. Where are you currently with Damien Lewis? Because he, to me, is the guy who might be a long-term solution, but I don't know yet. What do you think?
I think with Damien Lewis, you end up in a similar place to where you were like with Gabe Jackson this last offseason. Not to say that Lewis hasn't improved a little bit here, but there was a point in this game where we tried to run a screen. And we tried to run a traditional screen. And I think it's been since Holmgren. I haven't watched a good Seahawks screen game since 2004. I think when Holmgren was here was the last time I saw just a traditional running back leaks out, defensive lines coming at the quarterback. He throws it over the arms of the defensive lineman, just that kind of screen. But what stood out to me on that one play, the screen, and they showed an all 22 shot of it during the telecast, and Lewis has got to get out there in space to lay a block, and he just can't do it. And I do think that though he's taken steps forward, and I like where his game's gone this year, Lewis, I do still think that when you're talking about what we're trying to do here from a schematic standpoint with our offensive line is we need mobile offensive linemen that can move in space, and for a variety of different reasons, reach blocks, getting to the second level for the screen game, not just traditional running back screen, Brendan, but also the bubble screen game, which is also a part of our offense. It's not been a very normalized part of our offense going for years now, right? And so I think there's a reason for that. I think it's because you can't get your guys out there to get the blocks lined up, and you got to get more mobile guys to get it done. The oddity for me with Damien Lewis this year that's been throwing me off, and I'm not sure what to make of it, is that he was a run blocker when he's on the right side, who struggled in pass protection against the limited one techs. Then you move him over to the left side, and you think, okay, he's going to dominate the 3 techs that are probably about 30 pounds lighter, but he's going to struggle really in pass protection because now those are on brighter display. But like this year, it's been on the opposite. If you look at his grades and where he's been at, it's been that he's been holding up better in pass protection, and his run game has kind of failed on him a bit. And so, I think you're not going to be able to address it because you got center, right guard, we got our middle linebackers, we got our defensive line, we might have to address the safety position, we might need to find a receiver, we might need to find another running back. It just becomes on the totem pole of needs, like 13th or so. So you probably just can't get around to addressing it. But I don't know if long-term he's the guy, because I do continually see at times with him, outside of pulling back across the screen and laying a wham block, which he's done pretty good this year and sprung a couple of really big runs doing that. He just can't seem to get to the second level as comfortably or easily.
Right. You should be able to build an offense where you're asking your center to be the move blocker or the right guard to be the move blocker instead of the left guard, if that's the personnel that you have, right? Like, it's your job to find a way to build an offense around what you have to work with, not the personnel you wish you had, but the personnel that you actually have. So,
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. But that's the guy who I think can go one way or the other at this point.
We could still be let me put it this way. Like we could still be a top 4 offense. We could be a better offense than we were this year. We could be even, I think, significantly improved of what we've been this year with Damien Lewis on this line if you address the center and right guard positions, to your point. And if you do that, that would be fine enough with the tackles and their second year of development. We're going to get on the outside with them, with the tight ends that you have in place here. You can start to put this down. So he's not the big issue on the line or whatever, and it's not a thing that we have to cross as far as a bridge right now. It's long term, but that's just where my one worry is, lines. He has gotten better this year, and he's been overall, I think, a better than average rated guard by PFF on the season. So we've got to acknowledge that steps forward. Did not think he would get there at the left guard position when he made that transition.
So, other than that, it's hard to find anybody on this offense to be especially upset at. Can you think of any other angle you want to talk about this offense from?
I'm not in on the DK stuff. There's a lot of, I don't know, I'm sure you've heard of it, some of it in your chat or whatnot too. And it's, there's a lot of consternation with DK and penalties and all that type of stuff that people get mad at. I like the fact that Carroll backed him up with this and said, this is what you're getting with DK. I like the fact that DK comes out in his press conferences and says, this is what you get with me. I'm not going to push back against it. The 15-yard penalty in this game didn't cost us the game. And any of the games you want to look at in DK Metcalf where he's had a penalty because he's got hot-headed, never has cost us a game. Not the reason it was a game. And people can even try to mention that Rams game in the playoff game a couple years ago where he was on the sideline, obviously after a year of trying to get Russ to throw him the ball when Russ isn't looking his way, and probably understandable in retrospect why he was feeling that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that play wasn't him. That wasn't him calling for the screen pass on it. That was because Freddie Swain decided he didn't want to lay his block. A pretty simple block, quite frankly, in the NFL to lay for wide receivers in that moment, and he completely whiffed it. Could DK maybe come a little bit more to Russ there? Yeah, but again, none of that has to do with his emotionality on the sideline. It hasn't ever cost us a game. I will take it with him. I will ride with DK. That's a guy who's going to help us win football games, who's helped us win football games this year. He's in it on run blocking as well. He mentioned that about a lot of these guys, defenders, Brendan. A lot of the times they get pissed off because he's blocking hard as a receiver. And I don't know if folks are aware of this, but there are times when receivers, I'm 100% certain of this being a truth. I've heard it multiple times talked about between receivers and cornerbacks. There are times you get in games where a wide receiver will go out wide and he'll look across his cornerback and he go, okay, what kind of day do we want to make this here? I'm out here to catch. You're out here to cover. Do you really want to go hard in this run thing? Like, I'll put a medium effort on you. You put a medium effort on him. We'll let those guys can kind of take care of all that stuff. You and I will just make this about me covering me covering you, right? Sometimes it's unset. Okay. It's just you're feeling it on the effort across from you, right? You can feel the guy giving you a little extra or not. And if I'm dialing it back, you're not going to necessarily give him as much on that thing. So DK comes out there and he gives you it all. You're getting full meal deal all the time. And some of these guys are like, what's up with this? Why aren't you, and I think you're going to get some chippiness from that. And sometimes defenders who don't like that, but tough. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, this last game, the penalty he picked up, I don't even know what he did. I only saw the replay once or twice, but I don't know what he did. I don't
either. And I've seen there was another penalty early in this year against the Rams was the same way. Like, he said something. I see players talking to the refs all the time. It's they whatever. I just go So
yeah, I don't know. To me, it's kind of the wrong thing to get hung up on right now. There are real problems on this team.
Bingo.
Not that. The only argument I could see maybe being made would be, well, the refs clearly hate him, so he's going to have to make a concerted effort to get them off his back. But I don't know. I mean, it's just not the big problem with this offense right now, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. Like I've said this before, more often than not, he's the one to get the other guy to commit a penalty. Yeah. Than he is to get a penalty on himself. This year is really the first year he's gotten some penalties on himself.
Right. And it's at the very worst, to your point, that it's all basically even out across the board. And so it's not, and again, if it was, you can point to an actual moment where, this cost the game because he did some of his, no, it's, he's trying his butt off out there. He's giving you everything he's got. It's an emotional sport. It's easy for us to sit on our couch and go play with a Buddhist-like calm and a Zen-like flow to your state. Don't ever get angry. Stay in your pocket. Like if I'm going across from it and I got to move another grown man across from me, guess what? I'm going to have to kind of have some internal fire and rage in me to kind of get that done. And if I don't, I'm probably going to get put on my butt. And takes all of us have got to get to our own way to get to that state. And some of us got to get amped up like hell, like DK does. And some people can just do it as like professional thing, but make no mistake about it. It ain't easy to get it done. And it takes a certain mentality to get it done. That's why I'm encouraged by it, not discouraged by it.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I agree with all of that. It's just not something that I'm really going to concern myself with. I'm way more concerned with the fumbles. If Metcalf wants to clean that up, then I would love that. But the fire, I'll live with that.
100%. Fumbles, no good. He needs to, get your hand, get down, get 2 hands on the ground. Don't try to drag these guys for 15 yards just because you can. Not to mention like him doing that stuff. Like somebody's gonna try to pull him out under the knees. Do that knee. You've seen that tackle where they go up high and then they curl under their legs and twist their knee into the weird wrong direction. So. Just do it like maybe not full on lock it yet, but I'm okay with like get what you can get, then get down, big man.
Red Ace, thank you for the $1.99. Can't wait for the mock draft, fellas. Big on DL. It's a pretty good DL draft, I think.
Fantastic. It set the stage. If Seattle does go Jalen Carter, they could come back in the second or third round, and there'll be some really nice big boy zero tech types in there that they could come back on with. So they definitely could double up on this, which we've seen them do recently, right? Last year, 2 corners in the draft and 2 receivers. So they could definitely double up here, and that would probably be a pretty smart approach, quite frankly.
Anything else you want to talk about with this team right now? Anything else that you think is pressing?
Nope. I think we're just kind of watching where this is going to go. What's the, I haven't looked into the advance because part of it's just been sort of making your peace with the season. What is it that we got to do to get in the playoffs?
Well, assuming we lose to the Chiefs and we win 2 of 3, then we're probably getting in, but we do need some things to go our way. We need the Lions to lose 1 game.
Oof.
And we need Washington to lose 2, which I actually think is probably going to happen. So mostly comes down to the Lions, or the Giants could lose out, but that includes the game against the Colts.
Okay.
If the Seahawks win out, they're almost certainly in. I will say that, but well, we'll talk about that after this weekend.
Yeah, let's get through Arrowhead first, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay.
All right. I think that just about closes the book on this one. There isn't a whole lot to say beyond that. The game is well in our rear view mirror, and we're just trying to move on. Moving on to this Kansas City game it's a Saturday game, isn't it?
Is it a Saturday game? I've been paying attention. I got to check my schedule, man. Get ready. It is Saturday. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
let's go.
I think I'm going to be live streaming it, but we'll talk about the Kansas City game in a couple days here when we do the pregame show over on the Hawks Nest channel. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight to hang out with us as we talk about this season. Had well over 200 people for most of the stream here. We got 225 right now. I do plan on going live on Twitch in a little bit here. So if you guys want to watch me play Judgment, head on over, subscribe or follow or whatever it is you do over there. And yeah, I want to thank Brandon for coming out to the show tonight, coming out to the channel. Brandon, thank you.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to everybody who hung out with us. We will be doing this again in 2 days over on the Hawks Nest channel. Go subscribe to him if you have not already. He does a couple streams a week about Seahawks stuff. We stream together over on his channel all the time. And, of course, when things look not so great, it's still got to be done. Somebody has to do it.
The night is always darkest just before the dawn, Brendan.
Right. So, just one last thing before we close up shop tonight.
Don't forget.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.